Today we're talking about film festivals.
That adds color to the story.
Roll sound. Cameras rolling.
Welcome to Butter City, a show all about filmmaking and all about Minnesota. Today we have Kiersten Dunbar Chace in the studio with us, who's made a phenomenal new film. It's called I'm Not Black, I'm Colored. And this film is your first documentary, right?
That's correct.
So how did you even decide to get into documentary filmmaking?
Well, really out of advocacy more so than anything else. I had been involved in community projects in South Africa since 1996. And it was through those experiences and seeing the plight of this particular community that made me rise up to the challenge of being a filmmaker.
Well, you've done a phenomenal job. I mean, especially if this is your debut as a filmmaker. It's a great piece. It's played in the Twin Cities International Film Festival, and I know it's gone on to a bunch of other film festivals and won like some Audience Choice Awards.
Yes.
And so, I mean, it's a nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. For folks that are kind of just tuning in, do you want to describe a little bit about how you first found? I mean, I know you were talking about comes out of your experience and wanting to do something, but when was that? How did you first say, there's a film here?
Well, maybe we should take it back a little bit even further, but in 1995 I had the privilege of producing a concert tour for one of South Africa's top gospel choirs. And while they were here, they, obviously this was 1 year out of Apartheid, 1995. Everyone was supposed to have this, this feeling of the Rainbow Nation and let's all, be unified. But when they got to America for the first time, people were questioning them continually, the group, as to, why don't you speak Xhosa? Why don't you speak Zulu? You're not what we think, South Africans should look like. And it was very difficult for them. And it was about 2 weeks into that concert tour where one of the young girls in the group pulled me aside and said, listen, I've got a secret to tell you. Please don't tell the rest of the group that I've told you this. And so I said, of course, I won't say anything. I wasn't quite sure what she was going to tell me at the time. And she said, Kiersten, in my country, I'm not a black South African. She says, I'm considered a colored South African. And being American, you just don't say that term, here in America. So I approached it with an open mind and embraced it. And I think it was really at that moment when I wanted to do more research. I wanted to know more about this community because while they were denying and not telling Americans, in my heart, I was thinking, gosh, this is exactly what you should be speaking upon, the truth of what really has happened in South Africa. So then about 10 years later, after taking several groups to South Africa, I took another group in 2004. And that's 10 years out of apartheid. And I'm just seeing this community deteriorating right before my eyes. And it was then that I realized that until people outside of South Africa really knew the truth about apartheid and what was happening to 5 or 6 million people, that things may or may not change, I don't know, but I just felt it was an obligation to teach the rest of the world about this community.
One can imagine why the whites put us out of District 6. Look at the sightseeing here. The dockyard, the blue sea, and look at the whole place is surrounded with mountains. But you know what is the amazing thing that I can't understand? Why are the lands still lying the way it is? Just our houses have been dropped. Look where we're staying now, way out of Cape Town. And I don't know what went through the minds of these whites. And sad to say, it almost seemed that apartheid is going into reverse. I hope it will not happen. I hope that the colored people will come alive and that somebody will know that we have to restore our dignity.
So this piece, I think, speaks to this idea that, there are so many voices in communities that often, because there's so many different people, it's so complex. but these big things happen, like apartheid, falls. But there's all these little stories that happen in between there, and I know that this film is highlighting a lot of that, and it's also looking at things around identity and the complexity of how we're all mixed up, and not just in South Africa but all over. We're very, very much becoming a people that have moved all over the place, and it becomes complex. I mean, how was that for you to try to sift through something as complex as this?
It wasn't easy. I think that was probably one of the most difficult challenges of the film was, coming back with 30, 40 hours of film and deciding which history was going to make it in and which history wasn't. That was a real struggle for me. But as a result of this film, what's beautiful about it is that this speaks volumes in other communities around the world. I have heard from filmmakers and people from all around the globe that are of mixed race heritage, from slave heritage, whatever, and so it has become a more global piece than I ever expected. So, and it does evolve around this identity piece, and so yeah.
I mean, wow, it's like that power of like what you're saying about being able to decide what story gets told and what doesn't. That's got to be really...
It was. I felt like I remember one evening, and I have a friend that was helping me with it. I remember just kind of weeping and crying because it was like I tore another page of history out, because I didn't have time, to add it in. And, so you had to just kind of go with the main structure and the main things that really made the story flow. So that really was the most difficult part, was pulling out some amazing footage and stories that I feel were very important to the film.
I think that's always the hard thing in filmmaking, is that you only have an audience for so long. And it doesn't matter, because we love these stories, as filmmakers we love them, and so you get in there, but you realize you've got to tell it in a certain amount of time, and you do have to make those really tough choices, and it's hard.
And it has also been a topic of people who see the film. Well, why didn't you do that? Or why didn't you go in that? And I just said, we had a small margin of time that we had to work with. And knowing that most of the world doesn't even know this community exists, just the information that we have, I think piques their curiosity. And it was my hope that then after this film, people would go and research and do more. So I hope it succeeded in that.
I think it has. Let's take a look at one more clip.
I think the worst dilemma facing the colored community today is people dealing with an identity crisis, because we aren't black, we aren't white, we're somewhere in between.
One day, a friend of mine who happens to be a Zulu, we were in discussion, and he said to me, "Yapi, why are you guys always referring to yourselves in negative terms?" I say, "What do you say?" He said, "Because, like, so-called colored." I said, "No, because I am black." And then he said to me, "I'm also black, but I am a Zulu." And that day I realized for the first time in my life that even though I am black, which is a state of mind for the struggle, a state of mind for the whole question of affirmative action, but deep down in my heart, I'm mixed. I am a colored person.
So everything that was a little bit white, a little bit more fairer, a little bit more like to be white, I think it's what they call the slavery mentality.
Kiersten, so this reiterates sort of this journey of identity and how important it is that folks have this sense of identity and how complicated it gets. And I think this piece is very well done, but it's also something I wanted to make sure we talked about, is the collaborative component that happens, and the kind of the magic that happens, especially when you pick a story like this. It's like all of a sudden, like when you decide as a director, I'm gonna take the story and move it forward, others sometimes fall into the project and become very helpful. Are there any stories? I know you were talking a little bit about the composer for this. But this, you want to talk a little bit about the music and how that came to be a part of this film?
Sure. There were several people, obviously, that collaborated on this. I obviously could not have done this by myself, but The music composer, his name is Todd Kamisiak, and I was working in an IT department at Coldwell Banker Burnett, who was very supportive of this film. And a gentleman on the other side of my cubicle had heard that I was going to do a film, and he said, Kiersten, we need to talk. And, like an instant message, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, he was on the other side of my wall, literally.
Instant message, yeah.
Yeah, so he IM'd, he says, can we talk? And I said, sure. And we went to lunch, and he said, I just wanted to tell you that I got a full ride to Juilliard years ago, and he said, but I was unable to attend because my mother had passed away. And he said, and my major, or what I was going there for, was film scoring. And he says, I have, thousands of dollars worth of software. And he says, it's my passion that I do on the side. Would you consider it? And I said, sure, give me your DVD or your CD. And I was wowed. It was perfect. You could tell that he had experience even though he hasn't done anything professionally. So that was a real blessing for me. And in addition, then also my cinematographer. It was really important for me to sew into the community down there. So, I would have loved to have been able to hire somebody here in the Twin Cities, but I felt it was also important to be involved with somebody from the community. And his name is William Diederichs. He's the cinematographer, and he also happens to be in the movie and has a very important piece in the film at the end. So I was really blessed with the two of them. And of course, the crew that was on set that helped out and volunteered their time.
Well, I think, you do a great job with this film as a director to really know how to pull in the people that you need to kind of get the pieces together, as well as the people that you interview, but also the people kind of behind the scenes you pull together. And I know you worked with the local filmmakers here, Melody Gilbert and Daniel Pierce, on this. How did you bring them in on this mix and get involved with those two? Because they're great filmmakers also from here.
They're amazing. And well, when I decided to take this leap into filmmaking, I remember my father always saying, if you're going to do something, learn from the best. And I remember probably a year earlier, I had seen a film on PBS called The North Star, about the Black pioneers. And I thought, this is exactly what I want to be able to do, but for the colored people of South Africa. So I just emailed Dan. I said, and by the way, his name is Daniel Pierce Bergen. He's a producer at TPT. I said, I know you don't know me, but I would really like to just sit with you and talk to you about this film and my business plan. Would you be willing to help out? And obviously he did. And he played kind of that behind-the-scenes, very quiet, supportive role. So, maybe every 4 or 5 months I'd get stuck and I could say, Dan, can you help me out? And then he said to try and go to IFP, and they have this program called DocuClub where there are people from the community who are filmmakers that get together once a month and they critique films and they kind of get you through your first rough cuts and things like that. And so Melody Gilbert was a part of that, and I'll tell you, that was like going to film school. It was amazing. And so she was a huge help in steering the direction and the flow, and she had a lot of ideas for the film. So,
well, it's nice to get those other voices in too, because at DocuClub, I know that you've got other people that are interested in making documentaries, and you get that. Sometimes you can get isolated in your own edit, and then you forget that like some other people can see it and they give great feedback.
You do, and it's interesting. I really recommend that for any first-time filmmaker is, we get really attached and very close to it, and we don't want to have anybody critique it. It's very, very important to have somebody other than your mother or your son or your grandma critique it. You really need to have people that, so the advice of all the people that were there, I kept having all these fade to blacks, and they're like, get rid of the fade to blacks, keep it flowing, keep it moving. So just those little things were very, very helpful to me.
Oh, that's great. Let's take a look at one more clip from the film.
Do we have... Am I an African? That's important. Do I have people from Europe? I don't really care about them, but do I have? If not, that's fine.
I don't know. I don't know what to expect.
It's like almost like, is my name in the book of life? Oh man.
Why do you want to know? You know, what can that help you? And I think that when you know where you come from, you sort of know where you're going. I know it sounds a bit corny, but to me, that's the way I feel.
My father, because he was very fair of complexion, and his mother told me, my grandmother, that his father was a white man. So I said, does that mean that my lineage would now go through a white regime that oppresses us like this? I don't want to be a white person. And I started to believe that I'm a Khoi.
This concept, Kiersten, of going and getting the DNA tested is so interesting, because it's like, is our identity really about what kind of blood we have? You know, because think about how many people don't even really, people have stories about what their blood is, but they obviously aren't necessarily sure about what their blood is. And does that make identity, or is it you know, kind of how your grandmother talked to you? Is it how, when you're interacting in the community, other people respond to you? And it's like this idea about what makes identity. And I think this is the piece that really makes this a powerful story, you know?
Yeah, this was a difficult decision. It wasn't even part of the original plan to put the DNA part in, and I was just really fortunate that somebody picked up on the identity crisis part and had recommended that maybe this is something that we would do. And I was hesitant at first, and obviously contacted the cast and said, you know, is this something that you would personally be interested in finding out? Is this important to you? And is this something that the community be interested in? And all of them except for one person was like, absolutely, I would love to know, because I can't put myself in their shoes. You know, I've been privileged to be able to know my history through records, through paper trails, through all these means. This isn't the case in South Africa. You know, it's just like there's a lot of people here in America who can't trace their ancestry back because records weren't kept of the slaves that had come in. The colored community, by the way, a majority of them their ancestors are from the slaves that were brought into South Africa. A lot of people don't know that. You know, everyone assumes they all came out of Africa, but there was also slave trade into South Africa. So they, you know, prior to 1850, there was no way, even 1900s really, there was no way to trace through records at all. So I was curious how the reactions would be. And I've had some people say to me, well, the reactions were so simple and so, you know, there were some interesting comments that were made about their reactions. And I thought that was really unfair, because if for the very, very first time you're finding out a little bit, you've just received a little peek into your ancestry, how would I react? And I don't think it was fair for them to judge the reaction of, wow. Yeah. You know, some of them just were like, you know, some of them didn't say anything, or they laughed. They just didn't know really quite how to react. So it's, you know, it was controversial in some ways, because I kind of felt like, is this really important? You know, you are who you are. Your identity is what you say you are. But they were very interested. And I know that the one gentleman in the clip who said, you know, am I an African? I've known him for 15, 16 years, and he was the one back in 1995 who showed me this newspaper, and he said, I think this might be my ancestors. And it was him, you know, that probably gained the most from it. He kind of said, this was behind the scenes, but he says, I want to wear this every day. If I could put this on my back and wear this of who I am, I would do it every day. So it was powerful, and it's very emotional for me to even watch this again, because I know how deep-rooted the feelings are.
But I mean, I think that it is something to think about. I mean, documentary filmmaking, it's sort of like the reflection happens to the person about who they are when they're in a film afterwards, when they get a chance to see it. And it's like, in some ways, these folks have signed up for kind of a double exposure. Yes. You know, like they're not only getting their life documented through, you know, you coming in and being able to tell a story, yes, but also they're having to have a reaction about a story they've told themselves. And then they are expected to have that in front of the camera. Yeah. You know, and nobody forgets. I mean, people can forget, but nobody really forgets that there's a camera there. And I think that is a lot for an audience to think about, that all the layers of what this person's experiencing, and you know. And when I was watching this, it makes me just think about how timely it is. And like when we think about in this country with Obama and all the conversations right now that we have a president that is, of multiracial background, and it gets to that piece of what have we done to ourselves when we've identified that there are in fact races, and then we've decided to treat people differently because of that. That doesn't go away. No. And you've done a great job of kind of capturing a piece of that story about just, in these few people's lives, how complex and how dynamic that is and how real that is.
It is.
It was very well done. Nice job.
Thank you very much.
How can somebody see this film now if they want to see it?
The film, they can purchase it at www.capecolored.com, and colored is COLOURED.com, and you can purchase it there.
And I know you've already got your eye on several other projects. Yeah. Tell me about these two projects that I know that you're looking at doing right now.
Well, there's several. One is I'm working on a kind of a legacy film for an artist by the name of Solveig Arning. She's from northern Norway. I met her actually through coincidence through the South Africa film and finding out about Sami heritage, which is the northern Norwegian tribal people. And and I'd met her, and I didn't even know that she was this amazing artist. So it's, not this riveting, documentary, but it will bring out a little bit more creativity that I maybe didn't get a chance to do in this film because I was so dealing with the story. Yeah. So I'm excited to jump into something a little bit more creative and artsy. The other thing that that I'm delving into is I really want to do a narrative. I had a chance to live in Santa Fe, New Mexico for a couple of years before moving out to LA, and it's this mystical, magical place that has these underpinnings of deep spiritual underworld things. And I just wanted to bring some of those experiences and characters to life. So that's a challenge. And out of all sincerity, and I have been challenged and I've been telling people to watch for it, but after all the controversy, all that I've been through the last 4 or 5 years, I've decided I'm going to make a nature film that has no controversy. It may not even have a storm in it, just because I want it to be something, and I know that would be boring as hell.
Not necessarily.
But, I think as filmmakers, we need kind of a release. And so I'm just kind of looking forward to maybe doing a little short nature film just as an expression of my getting over the hump of that first film. So
well, it feels like you've just found your love. Like it feels like you've just unlocked the door of what's like a whole series of films that you're going to end up making. And congratulations, because it is no small feat to actually get the camera, go out there and make it. And you made it, and you made a really good piece.
Well, thank you so much.
So I'm excited to hear about these next projects, and you'll have to keep us posted about those.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on the show today, Kiersten.
Pleasure.
Thank you for watching Butter City. It's a show all about filmmaking with a Minnesota connection. You can follow us at buttercity.com. Check us out on Facebook. You can tweet us. We're all around. Just check us out. Thank you.